Rob, thank you so much for the excellent podcast. Most of my questions for Dutch are about his Continental days in Alabama. There's very little out there about Continental, but I'd like to know more. Now, this guy emailed in and he asked like a million different questions, but I thought just general Continental stories.
Well, Continental is probably one of the least talked about territories that people still talk about. It had great TV. They had great stories. It was well produced. And it looked like a regional TV. They would do it in front of instead of doing it in a studio, they did it in a crowd in Birmingham, Alabama, at the downtown city auditorium. But had great stuff. Robert Fuller and Ron are both great bookers and great storytellers, and they're funny. Everything is not guts and death and dying and bleeding. They do funny stuff. It's kept, that's for you kids. You got to get something for the kids. And it was a great TV. So if you get a chance, I think some of their stuff's on YouTube. Just look at their stuff. And if you're a wrestling fan, you're kind of like it. Gordon Soley was the announcer. And sometimes people would do interviews. They had to go on stage to where Gordon was, because he couldn't walk that well. So they had to go to the podium where he was, which was kind of awkward because he may be talking to one guy in the ring and, the other guy was back up there with Gordon. But it was a great TV, and I actually loved Continental show. Very good.
I interviewed Shane Douglas a couple of weeks ago, and I hadn't realised that he was in Continental briefly, and he was tagging up with a very young Sid. Yep. Were you there at the time when those two were tagging up?
I don't know if I was there then. I think I was around him when he was teaming up with John Laurinaitis.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were trying to be the skateboarder guys or whatever. That never got over. And I followed most of Dean's work. Shane's work in ECW. And he was more cut out for that, I thought, than he was for ECW. For Continental. Continental was like, it was a fun show to watch. ECW wasn't fun. It was blood and guts. They had the one announcer, and they were actually extremes of the wrestling business. One was for entertainment, one was for blood and guts. So you either pick one or you pick both. I don't know how you could be fans of both of them, but I guess you could be. But Shane Douglas, he told me one time, this is years ago, when I think I met him in Continental. And I don't know how old he was then. He says, and I just thought of this the other day. He told me, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 35. Here he's 55 and he's still involved in it. So, and it's like, and I've said this before, it's not how you get into wrestling business, it's how you get out. So once you get this business is just an unusual business. I've enjoyed it.
Because you called him Dean. And I forgot you were in the WWF at the same time Shane Douglas was as Dean Douglas.
Dean Douglas. That's where I got the Dean from.
How you must have seen him come in and think, that's one of the worst characters I've ever seen.
Well, I think they could have made that work a little bit, but it had an X on it from the go. Like, what you need to do, you need a gimmick that everybody can see potential in it. And fans too. The Dean, what was he the Dean of? Dean was the Dean of students.
Yeah, apparently.
He's going to be the Dean of wrestlers. Wrestlers don't give a crap anyway. Yeah, that was one of the crappier gimmicks I've seen. And he didn't like it either, because that was dead on arrival. That's like I talk about now on my Sports Kita show, that It comes on live on Facebook every Friday night, Sportskeeda. I talk about the maximum male models. Gimmick is dead on arrival. It's already dead. Their manager that brought him in, their speaker, excuse me, he's already quit. He's already been released from them. He got out himself. I mean, they took him out because they're going to use him in something else. But I saw that the first time. I said, there's no way in hell that this is going to get over. It's two worlds that meet and are not compatible with each other.
I mean, it's one thing to give a character that's not going to draw anything on the bottom of the card, but they brought Shane in to be intercontinental level, and then they gave him the character of a teacher who, with the Board of Education, is like, I don't think anyone's ever bought a ticket because they really hate somebody because they were so smart. Man, I really hate that smart guy.
But you got to think, what was Vince thinking when he did it? Who convinced him that Shane Douglas could be a good dean and talk to the Board of Education? How does that draw any money at all?
I've got a theory that this was when he was giving everyone an occupation, and Shane had been a teacher for a couple of years beforehand, and then Vince must have heard that and thought, well, you're a teacher then. And that's as far as the thought process went.
Well, going by your theory, he would have been an advisor to give everybody an idea of what they should pursue in life. See, like if a guy's good with his hands, well, be a bricklayer or be a mason or be this or be an engineer or be something. But that was dead on arrival. And that was a time also that, and I was there, and no money was being made there. I mean, guys said, man, I used to do 3 times this, and now they were down to like making $1,200 a week. On the road, $1,200 a week, and you're traveling the country. Even back then, you were spending your money. You had to pay for your cars, had to pay for your hotel rooms. So you're spending at least $150 a day just on a room and cars. So if you're only making $250 a day, well, that's $100 a day. You're not making any money. And that's why he quit. He wasn't making any money. Even Jeff Jarrett told me one time, he said, man, I'm about to starve to death. I'm thinking, wait a minute, you're like in the top echelon here. How are you starving to death? He said, man, don't get me started.